Another day, another iPhone 16 rumor, and this one is spicy, so get your lotion and your candles ready. Don't know why I picked those two things in particular. Alright, in a report from the Korean news outlet The Elec, who has a pretty good track record, we have word that both iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max devices will be getting the fancy schmancy new Tetraprism zoom lens, which will make zoomy photos even zoomier. Yeah, the new lens that came out with the Pro Max this year is now going to be trickling down to the regular Pro size phone for people that have normal sized human hands. The Elec's report goes into detail about how Apple is bringing in LG to manufacture these lenses, so Tim Cook can get back to playing Quidditch or whatever he does in his free time. But you know, that's all a bunch of technical jargon, not what we do here on the show. So let's talk about how actually nice and lovely this development is. iPhone 15 Pro not getting the new 5x zoom lens was definitely a bummer, but it makes sense. Let's talk about for why. Tim Hardwick over at Mac Rumors gives his take on why it makes sense for iPhone 16 Pro to get the upgraded zoomy lens, and other news sites seem to feel the same. That since the 16 Pro and Pro Max are expected to get a display size increase to 6.3 inches and 6.9 inches respectively, that makes more room in the phone body to smoosh a bigger zoom lens in there. And though Tim's reasoning at first glance does make sense and makes enough sense for other news sites to agree to him, in typical me, Jern fashion, I disagree. All right, boys and girls, class is in session. Have a seat. Crisscross applesauce. Okay, follow my logic here. If we go back to the Elec's report, they talk a lot about how LG's production volume is going way up. And I think that is the main reason Apple is being able to pull the trigger on 16 Pro getting the 5x lens, and not just Pro Max. To me, if I'm being honest with you, it doesn't really feel like a size issue. Like, we can go ahead and make the excuse, oh, it only came on the 15 Pro Max and not the Pro because the Pro Max is the bigger phone, more room in the phone for zoomy lens. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think this was ever a size issue, and the fact that it's coming on the 16 Pro regular size next year is telling. My real reason for this, the reason I think it came on Pro Max first and not on both of these models, is actually a scale issue. A lot of the reason Apple produces or brings features a little bit later than other counterparts like Android manufacturers and whatnot, a lot of people complain about how late they are to the game, but in reality, a lot of the reasoning for why they are a bit slower is because they have to produce more phones at scale. And just as Apple is a victim of their own success when it comes to not being able to get competitive features out faster than, say, Samsung or somebody else, I think the same can be said about their own feature here, this 5x zoom on the Pro Max. I think they had to opt to use this on just one model this last year because they couldn't produce enough of them at scale fast enough for both models. Not only do these other manufacturers have to produce at scale, but they also have to match what Apple wants these things to cost, and sometimes those two things just don't line up. With that in mind, yeah, unfortunately, it does make sense as to why this, the normal people with normal hands model, did not get the Tetraprism lens, whereas the Pro Max did. So for those of you that usually get the Pro model, but you got the Pro Max this year just because of that new lens, you're suffering through the size of that phone for that new lens, maybe you should have waited till next year. Now, the real question is, do we think Apple is going to keep the price point the same, going from 15 Pro to 16 Pro next year? 16 Pro might be getting that Tetraprism lens, but you know what it's not getting? Touch ID. We'll talk about that after today's sponsor. You know what I left off my holiday wish list this year? Bath bombs. My baths just aren't the same without them. You might not know this, but this is a Stamps.com ad. You should not leave them out of your holiday wish list. Stamps.com has been helping businesses like yours and like mine save time and money for 25 years. No more trips to the post office, no more spending all the money after waiting in long lines. With Stamps.com, all you need is a computer and a printer. No extra supplies or equipment are needed. But here's the best part, because they really buried the lead here. Stamps.com will give you carrier discounts up to 84% off. That is insane. That's so close to 100% off, dude. Check out the link below or go to stamps.com/FPT for an entire 4-week free trial plus free postage and a free digital scale with no long-term commitments or contracts. And of course, a huge thanks to Stamps.com for sponsoring this episode of Uppertime. Welcome back. I will now give you a piece of news that no one asked for and no one wanted. So, our favorite kind, drumroll please, Touch ID will not be coming back to iPhone for iPhone 16. This is my shocked face. Can you see how shocked I am? Okay, for real though, this is basically just one of those we didn't think so, but this pretty much confirms it situations. The info comes to us from a report from this Weibo account that my web browser translated into a whole mess of words that I can make out to say, no come back, no. Now this is not the first thing that this Weibo account has shared. It has shared other stuff before to a mixed level of accuracy. But hey, we're having fun here. Anyhow, that account basically says that most pieces of equipment used to manufacture Touch ID's necessary chips for iPhone have been shut down and launched into the sun. Yep, nope, that last part, I made that up. You know, in a way, this Weibo account's report also lends us that just extra bit of credibility to the reports of the iPhone SE4 making the jump to Face ID, getting rid of the home button, in turn, getting rid of Touch ID. But getting back to the iPhone 16, because that's what this episode is about, it seems that every year we have sort of rumblings, reports going around that this year's the year for sure Touch ID is coming back. The claim is that Touch ID is going to be placed underneath the display, so every year we kind of think that is a possibility of happening, and then every year they go, actually, it's not happening this year, no Touch ID this year. I just have a question. Why the hell would you ever think Touch ID is coming back to iPhone? It's not. Here's my reasoning for that. When Apple announced Face ID all the way back in 2017 for iPhone X, they were full send, dude, completely on the train of Face ID being more secure and better in every way. That was what they were claiming, and eventually, yeah, it really is better than Touch ID in basically every way. So for them to bring Touch ID back to the iPhone would have to require them backtracking on all of that, on how great and secure and more secure Face ID is over Touch ID. It ain't happening. That ship has sailed, honey, and it ain't coming back. But something that absolutely is making its way to iPhone 16 next year, the action button. We talked about the action button coming to the full iPhone 16 lineup a few times now, most notably in our list about the best things to be excited about for iPhone 16. And now, Mac Rumors has some serious confidence thanks to seeing what they say, or what they call, is extensive evidence. In a lovely write-up by Marco, we get some zesty new information about the action button on iPhone 16 and some changes coming to the newest kid on the block of buttons, the button block. Apparently, other than just the action button coming down to the base models for iPhone 16, they're also making changes to the action button, even though it just became a thing. For one, Apple is making the move to a capacitive button instead of mechanical. This would fall in line with the inevitable debut of fake buttons all over the iPhone, completely removing real buttons once and for all. And secondly, Apple is planning expanding the functionality of the action button on iPhone 16 by taking advantage of the pressure sensitivity of their capacitive buttons. Though we don't know exactly how Apple intends on using that functionality, it's probably going to be something like press little bit for toggling silent or ringer mode and press a lot of bit to launch TikTok or something like that. Who knows? I don't. So it seems to me that Apple's latest obsession is putting the action button on every iPhone that can hold it, because the SE4 is also supposed to be getting the action button. Does this spell out the total death of real buttons? Maybe, but I do know what it really feels like. Listen guys, this is feeling really familiar. Almost like when we had 3D motherfucking touch. 3D touch was the coolest and, according to Apple, most useless feature iPhone has ever had. And I miss it every day. How cool was it that you could press into your phone and make it do stuff? This is the perfect time to bring something like that back. After all, you can't really know if you love something until it's gone. And then it comes back as some weird action nipple button thing on a $1,000 smartphone. Or something.